Hello, I am Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be discussing the Yamatsumi tournament in my guide and strategies breakdown. So, as a background to various ranking dungeons, this one is actually somewhat unique because we actually acquired this dungeon about 8 to 9 months after Japan did. So the strategies used by the Japanese player base will be obviously helpful, but not as impactful as the other ranking tournaments have been, because we have access to so many different cards that were unavailable at the time. So that means this top 10 that you saw in Japan may or may not necessarily be the same top 10 we will see now. So we have to obviously use a certain degree of creativity because we do have more options available to us, which is unique for a ranking dungeon, at least for North America. So in a ranking tournament, we are scored based on 3 criteria. There is the average combos made, so you get 5,000 points per average combo. There's time remaining, so you have 500 points per second remaining. And then there's the maximum damage, and you get up to 10,000 points from this if you hit 40 million. It obviously scales down accordingly. And this is technically not really how you're scored, but it's kind of like a way to impact your decision making because you actually lose 5,000 points for using true damage to kill a floor. So that is important because if you use a button to kill a floor, you actually lose 5,000 points. Yes, it's faster, but you have to think, is it worth my effort at this point? So from Japan, this is one of the highest scored I could ever find. It's 131,550. He may or may not have broke the top 10, I don't know, but the point being is it's a ridiculous score using a somewhat outrageous team that is quite challenging to duplicate in the sense that not many players actually have the skill to use Anubis, nor the capacity to actually make 9 combos on a given basis, as well as having 5 Sanyas to inherit. So as I mentioned, the top 10 in Japan was dominated by this Anubis strategy in which you actually brought various cards of all the skill boosts and then the 5 different Sanya inherits to help activate a maximum combo board every time, so probably 8 or so combos from a given board. And that's obviously not easy to replicate because most people don't have the skill nor the Sanyas, so we need to look at other options. However, before we do so, we should just look at the dungeon as an overview. So, the goal of any ranking tournament is to obviously score as high as possible. And generally speaking, in order to score higher, you want to go faster. You want to have all your actives planned out so you use as few as possible, and you have a team that's reasonably easy to activate, as well as a team that has enough damage to overcome the various floors with minimal effort. So basically, the more prepared you are, the better off you will be, because you enter in blind, you're probably going to do poorly, especially in this one because there is a pre-draw spawn. So, in the dungeon, these are the various spawns as well as the typings they have, so what killers are particularly potent against them, as well as any important information that you need to have. We are assuming you're going to one-shot every single floor because that is what you ideally wish to do, because if you don't one-shot every single floor, you're going to be too slow, and then the run simply falls apart. So on floor 1, we actually have 2 different spawns, and they only have 650,000 health at maximum. There's a small preemptive, as well as 10 jammer orbs created at random. In addition, one of them also has a 4 combo shield, so you have to make 5 plus. So there's going to be lots of jammers, it may be hard to make combos, and it may just simply be best to actually use a full board changer to just remove them. Because if you convert the jammers into a color orb, you may have too much of those, may struggle to actually make enough combos, just problems may arise. So this is a floor that has a lot of luck involved because you have to actually have an activatable board, so you may be forced to use an active in this case. Floor 2 just has 1.5 million health and does absolutely nothing important. Floor 3 has 1.7 million health for 2 different monsters, and they will do a skill bind attack preemptively, and then they'll do a 3-turn bind, and that bind can occur on your leader or sub. And that is a lot of luck involved, because if it binds your leaders and they're not bind immune, your run is over. You're not be able to, you have to either use an active to clear the binds, which wastes time, or you're just simply not going to do enough damage, and it's over at that point. So there's a lot of luck involved here, but thankfully at least the skill bind attack occurs first, so it's not binding your skill bind, like SBR subs, and then getting locked afterwards. Floor 4 gives a 15% jammer skyfall. Basically, it will last for the rest of the dungeon, and they take 50% less damage from fire. So fire teams just do the same amount of damage as they normally would against a regular monster. But this 15% jammer skyfalls can be problematic because as you progress further in the dungeon, there's going to be more and more jammer orbs just simply appearing, and you'll be somewhat starved for your primary colored orbs. Floor 5 has only 45 health, but there's 10 million defense. And that means you have to use some sort of active to either kill it or just an outrageously high amount of burst damage. And I'll discuss those strategies shortly. Floor 6 has about only 1 million health and a 99% gravity preemptive. So again, your health is put down to low values, but it makes no difference because there's no actual damage attack on the next floor. And finally on the boss, it has 3.1 million health and just does nothing otherwise. So if you look here, God typing is actually the most common encounter because 3 different floors actually have God typing. So in theory, if you were able to stack God Killer, you are a bit more efficient compared to other types of Killer Awakenings. So these are what I feel are the keys to success in succeeding in a ranking dungeon. Yes, there's obviously a large degree of skill, but it does pay off to do your homework, because if you didn't research the dungeon beforehand, you would have probably just failed on the pre-draw, to be honest. And you want to try and min-max the amount of actives you use, because the less actives you are able to bring, the faster you are going to be. So keys to success are ease of activation. You want to ideally have an unconditional leader, and ideally an unconditional leader who has some sort of an additional activation requirement, because that way you can use the baseline multiplier to mow down through the various floors, and then when you want to do your burst damage to hit the damage cap, you just simply trigger that extra level of activation. So for instance, Aizen gives you 36 times attack as a baseline all the time, and he actually will have his damage ramp up significantly faster with each Dark Cross. So that means you don't actually need to use a Dark Cross every turn. You could simply match like 3 or 4 Dark Orbs and mow through the dungeon quickly. On the floor you want to hit damage cap, make multiple Dark Crosses, and you're set to go. So those type of leaders are ideal because they're easy to use. The other leaders I'm going to showcase further down below have similar levels of activation requirements. Like you just want to go quickly, it doesn't have to be too stressful. And in this case here, rainbow leaders will not do as well because of the fact that there are going to be so many jammers, your orbs are going to be diluted, you might have to use too many board changers, and board changers are tough because you have to plan them out very quickly, and you just don't have time in a ranking dungeon. Conversely, the more unconditional the leader skill, generally speaking, the better it is, because something like Shiva Dragon, who has a flat 25 times damage for fire gods, there's no restriction. You can simply match 3 fire orbs or many more fire orbs, and you always deal the same amount of damage. So you don't have to worry about hitting multiple colors or multiple combos. The point being is you can sweep floors very quickly, and that can be beneficial because if you're playing multiple times, you're going to have bad runs, and you want to at least increase your chances of success by having the most unconditional leader as possible. So what I want to stress is that you want to bring something that's easy to activate, because if you have leaders that are complicated, they're just going to falter, and you're more than likely going to fail to kill a certain floor in one go, and thus losing significant amounts of time. The next key to success is hitting damage cap. Now, you need to deal 40 million damage on a single floor, and this will give you 10,000 additional points. And this is huge because you only can move so fast through a dungeon, you only can make so many combos on a given board, and by choosing one specific floor to hit your 40 million will greatly improve your odds. So, for instance, let's say you are playing a dark-based team. Naturally, you want to try and pad your damage as much as possible on floor 2 because it's light-based, so you only have to hit 20 million at that point. So a lot more leaders are very capable of hitting 20 million. Furthermore, you may not necessarily need to have the damage enhanced, and if you have the proper killer awakenings like God Killer or Healer Killer, you'll actually be doing significantly more damage from that card, so you'll have an even easier time hitting damage cap. So you need to look at the dungeon and plan out where you can hit that damage cap. And to help ease that 40 million or 20 million, your double effectiveness, you want to try and bring as many Killer Awakening subs as possible, or leaders if that's the case, because it will just simply allow you to do more damage. Because it will be easier, and you may not necessarily have to bring that damage enhancing component, because the damage enhancing component takes up an extra active slot, takes more time. So, like I said before, God Killer will be the most beneficial Killer Awakening, especially when you're trying to pad your numbers on floor 2, floor 6, and floor 7. And next key to success is use as few actives as possible. Each active skill you use will always add an extra couple seconds or so to your time, and that is just a straight up loss of points. If you can plan out where you're going to use your actives and not have to use them any other place, you can cut down the wasted time if you may. So, for instance, you probably need an active on floor 1 because it's more than likely going to have a terrible board. You need some sort of active on floor 5, but in theory you may not need another active throughout the dungeon if you get very lucky. So maybe you can cut that down to 2, maybe 3 because there will be some RNG involved. So the point being is you want to try and use as few actives as you possibly can. And another thing to keep in mind is you want to have actives that have just one component to it. For instance, Claire just breaks hearts, and she'll be superior to Castor from a purely heartbreaking point of view, because Castor will have this haste component, and the haste will add additional time and basically make you lose more points. Obviously, Castor is good for taking away the jammers, but from a purely heartbreaking point of view, Claire is superior. The same can be said, say, about, say, Dark Pandora and Awoken Pandora. Dark Pandora's active is superior than Awoken because there's no haste component. So, the next key to success is bring a counter to the pre-draw. So the pre-draw only has 45 health and has 10 million defense. So unless you have a team that can hit amazingly high burst damage with ease, you're going to need some sort of active intervention to bypass the floor. Now, this falls into 3 broad categories: true damage, poison, and defense break. So true damage will instantly kill the floor and allow you to actually proceed to the next floor without any combos being made. This will not charge up any other active skills, so if you're planning to use a certain active by a certain floor, you don't actually have to worry about it because, well, you'll have to worry about it because you actually don't get a turn of charging up because no combos are made. However, you actually do not have your combo count being decreased, and this is perhaps why most of those Anubis clears used true damage to actually kill the pre-draw instantly, because it won't jeopardize their like 9+ combo count. And it's just faster, so they'll absorb the minus 5,000 points just to preserve that combo count. However, they may or may not have had access to ideal defense void breaking actives, so it may be something to consider. So next is poison. Now poison will deal a fixed amount of damage and it ignores the defense. So basically you poison the monster and you can match actually 0 combos and you will kill the pre-draw. However, this basically counts towards your combo count. So if you make 0 combos, you are going to be losing points because you simply didn't match anything. Your average combos will be lower because you will have 1 floor of 0. So you can obviously match other combos alongside, like clearing up the dead orbs, so that will help mitigate that loss of points. But there's also this animation at the end, like it's like the poison goes and then the monster dies. It's wasting a tiny bit of extra time. It's just extra animation, which is why I feel that defense break will be a superior choice. Because there's obviously going to be animation anytime you use an active, but at least Defense Break uses the animation only at the beginning. Poison uses the animation at the beginning and at the end. And with Defense Break, the pre-draw is ideally set to 0 defense, and that means any damage you deal will instantly kill it because there's only 45 health. So what you can do is Defense Break and then match as if you normally would, and whatever you match will actually kill the pre-draw. So this way you preserve your combo count and have actually a little bit more time saved compared to Poison. So whether you choose to bring true damage or defense break will be based on the team and how fast you wish to go, and basically how you feel it's going to impact your score the most based on like how your team functions. So potential leaders to use. Now this is not necessarily an exhaustive list because we don't really have much to go on because we have so many different leaders we have access to that Japan did not. So off the top of my head, you can feel free to obviously add in the comments below what you think could be a beneficial leader. I feel that Aizen is going to be probably one of the best leaders because you can easily hit 10 million and you have a flat 36 times damage. Yaoyu is obviously going to be a popular option because they can match 5 orbs, 1 enhance, and kill most things. Additional water orbs will obviously make your damage ramp up and up and up, and you should be able to easily hit damage cap on the Hino on floor 6. Reincarnate Shiva, I feel, will actually be reasonably strong because this dungeon does favor high combos. You can definitely make high combos, and a red TPA with 7 combos is going to kill any floor. You may have a bit of difficulty maybe hitting damage cap, but what you can try and do is hit 20 million on the final boss, which is much more doable. So I feel like Shiva does have a good chance because even though jammers will be falling down, matching jammers counts to combo count, and Shiva will still succeed, provided you have at least enough fire orbs. But to be fair, even 3 fire orbs will probably kill most of the floors because all of them have very little health in all honesty. Shiva Dragon will always be a strong ranking dungeon contender because 25 times unconditionally is great. It's easy. It mows through content. You can make a few combos with a TPA. Things die. Yomi Dragon is also, I feel, going to be strong. It's a shame we don't have the new evolution of Yomi Dragon because that 81 times of one combo would be amazing. But still, 36 times is actually quite reasonable. It's very easy to pad your damage on the second floor because it's light based. You might even bring Lucifer, let's say, for God Killer, and she will probably fall over, or Caster if you want for God Killer. And then for myself, I'm actually planning on using a Dark Metatron team because I have had success in the past using Dark Metatron. I've actually got a crown from the Athena tournament with Dark Metatron, so I feel like she will be reasonably strong because of the Durga buff that lasts for 2 turns, so I can easily pad my damage on the second floor while resetting my health simultaneously. So I feel like Dark Metatron will be my go-to girl for this dungeon, and I'll see how it goes and upload videos and another corresponding post if it is successful or I choose another team. So, as the last parting advice I wish to give you, you should always go into your options and turn off skills. If you turn off skills, your actives will simply trigger at the push of a button. You don't actually have to go through the animation of confirming, yes, use the skill. So this will save you a couple seconds per active skill. And you do this by going to Others, hitting Options, Dungeon, and then Skills Off. And this will save you time, it will give you more points, you may even actually get to a new tier bracket you never have before. So I hope this review does provide at least some inspiration of how to tackle the Yamatsumi tournament. It is a bit harder to, I guess, emulate Japan's strategies because we do have different leaders, and I feel that a lot of the new cards that have been released since the past 8-9 months will definitely impact the choices of players because they are a lot easier to use than Anubis. So let me know who you plan to use in this dungeon and how high of a score you hope to achieve. And this corresponding post will be linked in the comments below. So I hope you do have a mantastic evening. Best of luck when playing through this dungeon, and happy puzzling!